Hey guys, Danny here, and today I'm going to be talking about winter and what's going to happen during this winter. You know, the polar vortex is going to be forming within the next couple of weeks, as you could tell, right? There's going to be um, colder and colder air that's going to make its way throughout the North Pole of the world, correct? And it's going to be a very, very interesting winter. I have put a lot of things together that do explain how this winter is going to look like. And in the end, I will show you guys what I really think is going to happen. So, right now, if we take a look at the CFS model, we can see happening here. Now it does show a break in the polar vortex here, right? It shows cold air coming down into the United States. Do I think that this is a legit forecast for January or February? Yes, I do think this is a legit forecast. It's going to be sending a bunch of Arctic air that can be mixing with a warm, humid air and making some, good storms, especially along the East Coast. Um, so this does, explain that um, there's potential for the weakening polar vortex, and according to the CanSlips model, it does show more colder air going through into this area, right? And am I gonna correlate the models with, and it does show more of like a ridge towards Alaska, right? Am I gonna correlate the models with the La Nina? I think that that's something I could really correlate it with, yes. Um, so here, as you could tell, definitely colder air making its way down, right? That's what all of these climate models are predicting, right? You know, Maybe more warmer air towards the Arctic and displacement of that cold air. Do I think that it is true? Yes, that's probably going to happen, right? So here is the all of the La Ninas, right? So typically in December, we're probably going to have a weak La Nina, possibly a moderate La Nina, right? So either minus 0.5 to 0 to 1 or minus 1 to 1.5, right? Honestly, on average, I do think it's going to be a minus 1 La Nina, not that much of a strong La Nina, right? But if we do take a look at this, right, it does say December all La Ninas, and you can tell there's more cold air out there in the western part of the United States. December NAO negative La Ninas, January and February. Basically, when the NAO is negative and it's a La Nina, you get more cold air going into the eastern part of the United States with, more warmer air in the western part of the United States. With NAO positive La Ninas, you get more warmer air throughout the whole entire eastern seaboard, but more colder air in the western part of the United States. Either way, you know, I do believe that the NAO could be negative this year, but it's still too early to tell. The NAO is the North Atlantic Oscillation, and then there's the AO, and the AO right now is currently negative, so that's kind of a good sign in the right direction. So let's take a look at this. Um, as you can see, the typical La Nina pattern is overall a bit more favorable for a weakening event of the polar vortex. With low pressure over the Aleutians, this means that it can be easier for winter weather patterns to be disrupted and bring cold weather and snow to the United States and Europe. There's just an additional factor that currently hints at the potential of a weaker winter circulation. As you can see, a stronger weak polar vortex can significantly change winter weather in the United States, Canada, and Europe. But the polar vortex is not a simple thing in forecast, as it depends on many small and large scale factors. So basically, this article, I'm going to explain this to you guys. Here we got the SSW precursor located here. And La Ninas, as you could tell, they like to drop, cold air down from, Alaska, Canada into the United States, right? If you got cold air off the coast, that air isn't really that cold, right? When it's like over water, it's a different story. Um, so, you know, historically La Nina winter has a 60 to 75% chance of producing a stratospheric warming event. It has produced them in the past and also in recent winters. The image below shows the typical stratospheric warming event frequency by month and by the ENSO forecast. So basically, this means that um, the stratosphere is a lot warmer and there's a lot of cold air displacement, right? Which you could kind of be seeing in the weather models here, like you could view it on the CanSIPS model here, or on the CFS monthly model for January, especially, that there is cold air displacement, or even potentially in December. But yeah, there is cold air displacement. As you can tell, there is warmer air around the Arctic area, with that colder air being displaced and producing storms into the United States. Now, the main thing that we also need to watch out for is how strong the polar vortex is going to be. And the stronger it's going to be, the better. The stronger the better. Really, that's really how I'm going to put it, right? If we take a look at the 10 meter height and anomalies, this is basically the polar vortex here. And again, look at how these waves, they reach down into the United States. They don't reach down all the way here into Russia. They reach down to the United States. So this could signify a weakened polar vortex and more colder air coming into the United States. And again, the Northeast does not need to have very, very cold temperatures in order for there to be snow there, right? It could be a high of 32 degrees and it could be snowing all you want. It could be snowing a lot, actually, in areas like New Jersey, New York, Pennsylvania, Connecticut, Massachusetts. It could be snowing a lot. So, as you can tell here, that is showing a lot of cold air displacement, right? Consistent with the La Nina, right? And that's going to continue. So, um, let's take a look at this real quick. So, a sudden stratospheric warming event is exactly what the name suggests. A sudden temperature rise in the polar stratosphere during winter. Warming of the stratosphere means that the polar vortex is weakened and can collapse under pressure from the warming event. A jet collapse of the stratospheric polar vortex creates a chain reaction disrupting the jet stream below. This usually creates high pressure over the Arctic Circle and releases cold Arctic air into the United States or Europe. Such a textbook event occurred in February 2023, as in most cases, but not all. Looking at the first day of the 2023 SSW event below, you can see a large warming wave at the top of mid stratosphere. It spreads over the polar regions combined with stratospheric high, covering the North Pacific and Western Arctic. It has pushed and displaced polar vortex out of the North Pole. Right, so basically, a lot of low pressure here, meaning that there's more storms here in the eastern part of the United States with higher pressure there in the west. Um, and you can see the compressed polar vortex over Siberia. This is because a strong stratospheric high area has taken over the polar regions and severely disrupted the atmosphere in the higher and mid latitudes, right? The disruption happened on a large scale and extended over much of the stratosphere. Even though the disruption was strong, it still took time for actual efforts to filter into the lower layers and our daily weather. The resulting pressure pattern below was fully established 2 weeks after the initial SSW event. The main result was a strong blocking high over Greenland, with the displaced low pressure systems from the United States over the North Atlantic into northern Europe. So as you can tell, right, a lot of the displaced systems moving through these areas, right, and obviously the higher latitudes, they determine what occurs in the lower latitudes, and the weather translates about, it's 2 to 3 weeks usually. It's 2 to 3 weeks that you need to wait for the weather to translate, from the upper levels of the atmosphere to the lower levels of the atmosphere. This pressure pattern is a typical weak vortex event, as we showed in the intro. It means an easier escape of cold air into the lower latitudes, right? So again, it may not be too much cold air that is going to be, you know, coming in. Well, there's probably going to be a good amount of cold air coming into the United States. But if you're talking about eastern United States and if you guys want to see snowfall, it can't be too cold. And if it's not too cold and the jet stream where the low pressure systems are moving is along the eastern seaboard, then you're going to see a lot of snow because the cold side of the storm is always the western side of the storm, right? So, looking at the temperature anomalies for the time, you can see a strong cold outbreak across the US. Greenland blocking system helps to push the cold air out of the polar regions. So, stratospheric warming event makes these scenarios much more likely in winter, right? And then there's no real cold outbreak in Europe, so can't always impact everything. Um, so yeah, there's a La Nina event coming. Below the ocean temperature forecast for late autumn and early winter. So again, La Nina is going to be continuing. And so basically, I'll scroll up. So this tells us some important story of how a weaker polar vortex in September can foreshadow a weaker polar vortex in winter. The values are not high or strong, but the signal it shows us is obvious. If we look at the overall context of these anomalies of temperature and pressure over the pole, we get a clear signature of sudden stratospheric warming events. These high energy events cause rapid temperatures and pressure rises in the stratosphere, bring about weather changes in the lower levels. So 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 right now, yeah, we do have some indications. Yeah, of some uh like a weaker polar vortex right now. So basically, right now the polar vortex is a little weak. The Siberian snowfall is above average. The AO is negative. The um stratospheric warming is pretty warm. So you can see a bunch of high pressure areas, and obviously you could read this exactly what I'm reading. So yeah, obviously all forecasts, yeah, saying the polar vortex is running, below the average. And so basically, we need to see more intense winds in the stratosphere. And um and again, yeah, here is the forecast. So we do have, you know, signification of this. Continue scrolling up and just looking at all these images. So here we have the zonal mean temperature. Below is the NASA analysis graph of the temperature in the mid-stratosphere over the North Pole. The blue line is last year and the gray-white areas are historical data. Okay, so yeah, we got the blue line for last year. Um, and then currently, the line is pretty much within, the usual. So yeah, so stable polar vortex keeps all the cold air there, and then this one just moves around. And yeah, so yeah, this is just an article talking about the polar vortex and how it's very very important. So again, weaker polar vortex. And yeah, so the negative AO favors a warm Arctic and cool conditions across the US and Europe, and currently the AO is negative, right? And it could continue staying negative. So I do think there's going to be a lot of cold air that is making its way into the Northeast. So I would say, my prediction for this winter is for it to be a typical La Nina winter, right? And I do feel like what the temperatures we could see below average temperatures in the northern part of the US, correct? And obviously if you do want to see um systems coming through the eastern part of the United States, maybe the temperatures are going to be a little bit closer to average or maybe even above average, right? And that will lead to many different things. So, we still need to wait a little bit, and we got some La Nina temperature maps, and obviously it depends, but obviously with the NAO being negative, that contributes a lot towards very, very cold La Nina winters, right? But let's take a look at La Nina winters, precipitation, and snowfall anomalies. So if we read more about this, right? Um, Give us a better idea. So here we got, weak La Nina impacts when it comes to the precipitation and the temperatures. So, we are probably going to be heading into a La Nina. So, definitely below average temperatures in some areas, right? And, yeah, again, the jet stream is like this, right? Meaning that, colder air coming in through here. But then if the storms ride the jet stream and go through New York or New Jersey or just off the coast, that means that there will be above average precipitation, right? And so that does signal, that it will be wet and cold in the eastern part of the United States, right? And could also be wet and cool in the western part of the United States, right? Dry and warm in the southern part, right? Which does explain, right? If we take a look at the CFS model, for example, and you take a look at the temperature anomalies, right? It does show that there is, hold on, again, yeah, look at this, like colder air, through the northern part and warmer air there, right? Precipitation anomalies showing below average precipitation, southern part of the US, above average, going into the northern part. And again, same thing for the month of January and for the month of December, again, same thing. So, you know, storms coming across the country could be very, very common, right? I do, feel like, with my own predictions, that the winter is going to be pretty cold and there's going to be a lot of precipitation that also comes along with it. Now, polar vortex isn't as strong. It's going to be continuously getting stronger as we continue to cool off. There's a volcanic eruption. This season in volcanic ash, it does trap a lot of um, stuff in the atmosphere, meaning that with the volcanic ash, um, could trap more uh, sunlight in the atmosphere, preventing it from reaching the ground, and then it gets colder. So I do. There's gonna be a trough in the east, and I'm gonna show you guys real quick exactly how I think this winter is gonna be. So probably this is probably the most likely scenario here with you know let's see. So again, this could be something that La Nina is gonna bring. Again, another forecast like this, right? And I think that this is gonna be the pattern really for this winter is that colder air coming in with wet conditions, warmer and drier in the south. And that's what all the models are agreeing with, really. And the main thing we really need to watch for, too, is the polar vortex, right? Is it going to intensify or is it not going to intensify? I don't know. Now, we need to watch that carefully, right? If the polar vortex very intensifies a lot and it's strong, while at the same time having cold air displacement, we're going to be seeing very, very cold temperatures, right? But as of right now, with La Nina winter, being in favor, I do believe that it's going to be a very cold winter for the northern part of the United States, and it could be very snowy in the east because the jet stream it cuts off there. It cuts off. The storms need a place to ride the jet stream, right? And where would the sweet spot for snow be? New York, New Jersey, and all those areas. So that's my prediction for this winter. This, what you see on the screen here, is what I think is going to be this winter. And I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Have a great day and peace out.